but I think I should be treated fairly, the same as everybody else is. And
wait, what?
Never
shit. I wasn't paying attention to the video, but the room started smelling really bad, and I was like, what the f is going on? Did I fart? Turns out it was Asmongold on screen. Let's move on to the new Second Thought video, which is looking based as Jesus Christ, this guy's editing quality is out of this world, man. He's even making Johnny CIA Harris shake in his goddamn breeches, bro.
Is it just me, or does it seem like conservatives are getting really comfortable with casual cruelty these days?
The Cruel Kids table.
The Cruel Kids table.
Are you cruel?
They want to be able to say slurs.
People feel like they can say the R word specifically.
We're going to call them fags and again.
Many people feel or see a power in that.
It was an act of astonishing cruelty and callousness.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
Somehow we've given them edginess, but the shitbag left is taking it back. And no, the shitbag left is not about just using slurs and so on. It is about calling them stupid troglodytes just without having to use slurs, like the word troglodyte, which is not a slur, okay?
I find you guys to be subhumans.
Since the inauguration, we've seen conservatives lashing out. They're excited. They're calling people slurs as if it's edgy.
But it also says a lot about just the permanent internetization of culture. We've posted for so long that posts have overtaken speech. What do I mean by this? It's like you can run a campaign based on telling people that they can finally post stuff that they can no longer post. Like they can say the R word, they can, blah, blah, blah. It's so nerdy and pathetic and weak as shit, brother.
It does feel more intense and shameless now that Trump is in office.
And our country will be woke no longer.
No one is shocked this is happening, just like no one is shocked who is being targeted. Immigrants.
We're getting the bad, hard criminals out. These are murderers. These are people that have been as bad as you get.
But also
very
trans
bad.
People.
They're very bad. They're gonna take your toothbrush.
In office more than a week ago, he's now taken several actions focusing on transgender people.
And really, anyone
transes, they're gonna take your dicks.
In with the DEI label, including women, black people, the rest of the queer community, people with disabilities, and on and on. Everyone knows what we're talking about here. They even made a list for us.
Hi guys, I'm the tallest right-winger. Ooh, my eyes are down here, guys. Why does nobody want to date me? Heightest, yes, a proud one. But there are good shorts. I don't hate short people. My best friend is short. Shorts and talls, all I'm saying, equal but separate. Okay? What's up, Maple Takes? Pretty soon history books are going to say that the first nuclear weapons were dropped by the enologist roommates.
Elon want to eliminate more and more parts of the government until all they're left with are the cops and the bits that'll keep them rich, cutting out anything and everything that keeps everyone else safe or generally makes life in society have a point. The rhetoric is working side by side with devastating policies, and those policies are making life worse for everyone, but especially those conservatives are painting as different. The rationale behind why DEI specifically works is a little less clear. That is, until you realize that this kind of thing isn't all that new. It's part of a long American tradition of backlash politics. And to really understand it, to really grasp where this misplaced anger against disenfranchised people is coming from, we're going to need to talk about the economic roots of conservative politics and how liberal politicians like Biden and Obama have played into this.
Was JT's hair always so curly, or did it get curlier the more left he became? I need to ask him that.
If you haven't heard about it before, backlash, or more commonly, white backlash, is a term we sometimes hear when progressive politics are violently reversed by conservatives. It's usually called white backlash specifically because we've seen this happen mostly when white conservatives violently make sure white people stay above everyone else. The most obvious example of this happened after the Reconstruction era. If you remember, the 15th Amendment made it so that states couldn't deny black men the right to vote anymore, and as a result, 500,000 black men joined voter rolls and elected nearly 2,000 black representatives. This obviously didn't end racism or white supremacy, but that possibility was scary enough that, in response, white conservatives got to work finding ways to exclude black voters to make sure it never could. The Jim Crow era backlash to Reconstruction meant a whole new list of things designed to keep black voters out, like literacy tests and poll taxes at the voting booth. The poll tax they set up in Georgia, for example, cut black voter turnout in half. Meanwhile, white voters could skirt most of these new laws by being grandfathered in, meaning whatever voting status their grandfather had, they would automatically get too. For black Americans whose grandparents were slaves, this obviously didn't apply.
Systematically as well. That's why it's so funny. It's not just the ideology of racism that had persisted in the United States. No, they made unironic legislature that literally said, you gotta have been white for a second now if you want to vote.
When poll taxes and literacy tests were abolished, for example, backlash happened through new techniques like gerrymandering, voter ID laws.
You know what's something that's like objectively, aesthetically looks like shit, but really makes me feel extremely comfortable and makes me feel like good, makes me feel nice, is when I wear my glasses like this. Like, I know it's so douchebaggy, but I guess maybe I'm a douchebag. No, am I a douchebag? Holy shit, I'm a douchebag. But it just feels so right, you know, you're like, no, 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 no. No, 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 no. You know, you got your glasses on your back. Ooh-ha. Yeah, I'm a guy with the glasses on my back. I'm a guy with glasses on my back.
Anti-progressive judge appointments, the war on drugs.
So just look at me do it. I don't, oof. Does this trigger you, chat? Oh, are you triggered yet, chat? Man, I'm behaving like a Republican. Are you triggered yet? Oh, feels so right. Oh.
Meanwhile, by the way, wealthy legacy admissions are completely untouched. And it's not hard to see all this new anti-DEI stuff as another example of backlash. DEI is the new woke. Woke was the new CRT. CRT was the new BLM. BLM was the new politically correct. And PC was the new civil rights activist, and so on and so on.
Go back before civil rights activist. You know what it was? It was a race traitor. I have stood by you for years since you've been on YouTube and have agreed with most, if not all, your opinions. But what you just said right now about sunglasses on the back of your head, that is the line I am drawing in the sand. You have crossed me and you will regret it. I am so sorry, Debo. You've been with me for so long, but I'm not going back on my opinion that it is extremely based to wear your sunglasses like a 75-year-old Floridian white man, okay?
These words are synonyms for black, trans, gay, woman, and all those things become shorthand for bad, unqualified, entitled, lazy, or undeserving. We just saw an incredibly obvious example of this when that helicopter crashed into a plane in DC earlier this year.
That a small aircraft collided with a helicopter.
Trying to recover the wreckage from the American Airlines jet and the Army helicopter, both colliding, killing everyone on board the two different aircrafts.
We do not know
the DEI crash of 2024.
Trump immediately blamed DEI in the vaguest terms possible, giving conservatives a long leash to flood social media with their attempts at finding out if anyone involved was indeed DEI. They assumed, without needing to say it explicitly, that if everyone involved was a straight white guy, then they couldn't possibly be unqualified, knowing full well that the odds were high that someone involved wouldn't fit that bill. The conservative project for the week became finding out every single person involved and, based exclusively on their identity, figure out if they really deserved to be there. And for a minute, they were happy, because one of the pilots was a trans woman. Except, no, she wasn't involved. Jo Ellis, the trans woman misidentified by thousands of conservatives online, is alive and well.
Don't you know, chat, planes and choppers only fall if there's a minority driving them. Flying them, driving them, very English language spec, me very London language, indeed spec very good. If the pilot ain't trans, I'm canceling my planes. Yeah, brother.
To hear the right talk about wanting to say slurs and moving further right explicitly for that purpose, then slashing anything related to progressive causes, they usually imply that it's because the left went too far. As if anybody actually suffered because they were told saying slurs could be inconsiderate. As though DEI policies ever reversed the racist hiring and firing practices of American businesses or resolve the disparities we have in our society. It doesn't matter. Woke was just too much too fast. That's something we've heard a lot from conservatives, particularly from apolitical comedians. All of this stuff, all this conservative anger and reactionary politics, it's almost never based on any actual loss of privilege from what these losers...
As you got me watch Carlin or Hicks before? Literally on stream, like 50 times, bro. I live for specifically Carlin. Oh my God.
I will never support somebody that will put me at a disadvantage because of immutable characteristics. Maybe you do not need that, but I think I should be treated fairly, the same as everybody else is. And
wait, what?
Never
shit. I wasn't paying attention to the video, but the room started smelling really bad, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on? Did I fart?" Turns out it was Asmongold on screen, and yes, the man has elevated his stench to such a point that even digitally, he can generate a sort of unease that enters absolutely every single room.
I will never support somebody that will put me at a disadvantage because of immutable characteristics.
The point isn't to put you at a disadvantage. The point is for nobody to have any sort of advantage based on immutable characteristics. Okay, everything else is a supremacist attitude if you actually believe that because of immutable characteristics, you get to be on top. The only thing the leftists, at least normal, not unhinged ones, want to do is actually level out the fucking playing field, but no.
If somebody says that I shouldn't be treated fairly and I should be put at a disadvantage...
Oh, I love fighting the non-existent communist that just, I don't know, wants to really treat Asmongold unfairly. Though, come on, let's be honest, Asmongold should be treated unfairly because everybody without a baseline level of personal hygiene should not be allowed in public spaces.
Every attempt to redress inequality is therefore reverse racism or giving them a disadvantage, even though it's obviously not. It's a fear that's well documented and completely unfounded. Take the Civil Rights Act. Remember how I mentioned that it also experienced backlash? Well, to be more accurate, prior to it being voted in, conservatives were fear-mongering that it would mean favoritism and special privileges for Black Americans. Conservatives lied, and white Americans were worried that integration would mean subjugation, that they'd be forced to sell their houses to Black Americans, or that Black people would, quote, take over the country. Again, this was during the Jim Crow era.
I mean, it hurts me to even say it is the greatest cliche of all time, but the only reason a majority should fear becoming a minority is because it tends to think that the minority will treat them the same way they treated them in the first place, which inadvertently admits that deep down inside, they know that they are actively mistreating said minority. White people that aren't racist absolutely don't fucking mind this, because they're like, well, so what if there's like a Black majority? I don't get it. Like, it's genuinely like it flies over their head in a good way. But dudes that are either directly or subconsciously racist, they're like, no, that's going to be bad because they're probably going to start, thinking shit about me the way I think about them. But then they'll have enough power to act on it, which I don't want to see, and I want to keep my privilege in this relation of bigotry towards the other, right? Like, if there's anything going off in your head that looks like fear at the idea, people that don't look like you becoming a majority, you have issues that you really need to work on, and you're a little bit of a bigot, but, you can get help. There's still time.
The newspapers were filled with calls that the civil rights movement was going too far, moving too fast, that they were being unreasonable. Politicians were getting letters from white voters saying, quote, wait a minute, we've got rights too, as if white people's rights were ever in question. The right mobilized to pump out a message of fear and reaction that would block the left on their path to material progress towards equality.
That is the only honest racist to an extent, and only honest white supremacist, and only honest white nationalist. And honest does not mean good. Honest just means that they're not fucking lying. I'm talking about when a white supremacist literally says, listen, history is one group of people oppressing another. Hierarchy is inherently human and very often based on how somebody looks and ethnicity and so on. So we want to make sure that our people are the ones that are stepping on necks, and want to make sure that our necks aren't being stepped on. That is racist, that is fucked up, that is unscientific, but it is honest. Everything else is sleazing through the cracks, giving you different policy pitches that at the end of the day believe the same thing. Hierarchy is not inherent, absolutely, but that is what fascism is, at its absolute crux, at its absolute core. The radical belief in natural category, which is hierarchy. It's not something that can be changed, something that can be overcome through civilizational progress. Quite to the contrary, It is inherent to the human experiment and therefore must be brought to its fruition through the dominance of a chosen people over all other subhumans.
DEI initiatives haven't meaningfully transformed the distribution of wealth or power in this country. By and large, it's a weak attempt by corporations to look less evil without needing to do much. Yes, there are a few women and queer and black people in positions of power, but them just being there hasn't dismantled the system of producing inequality that unfairly targets the groups they belong to. The average black or Latino household is still far below the average white household in terms of wealth, as is the average queer household. Members of all these groups, non-white people, queer people, those with disabilities, are also still experiencing discrimination and harassment at incredibly high rates, on top of higher levels of poverty, homelessness, and unemployment.
You're one black man who went to a good, essentially white high school in the city of New York.
That's
you
correct.
Obviously had had a good education. A good many of the people who work with you here in SNCC can say the same thing.
And we're saying that there's a system that allows for 1 or 2 black people to get out.
Hey, look at you. You managed to do well for yourself. Doesn't that mean that everybody else can manage to do well for themselves? The logic of literal fucking troglodytes.
That's the rationale, that the reason why black people aren't this is because they're lazy, unambitious, stupid, have rhythm, and they eat watermelon.
Okay, listen, you either believe in material conditions, pushing particular populations toward this or that level of success in capitalism, or you are racist. And there's no third direction there. Because if you don't believe that material conditions greatly influence how a particular people is doing, you must then believe that particular people are less capable than other people in certain regards. So if you don't believe that a particular country, let's even take a whole country, is poor because of its history, because of the kind of stage of development it finds itself in, because of its relation to empire, to its neighbors, to the strength of its economy, to how much of its own resources it can exploit instead of them being exploited, etc., etc. If you don't think that that's what defines just how advanced a country is, then you de facto must believe in ethnocentric virtue, like certain peoples are better at this and another people is better at this, which is called, drumroll please, I don't have a fucking drumroll.
Wonderful, a new child soldier.
Racism. Okay. Like excellence, liberalism is not my place to speak on, but it's on vivid display in society today, of course. But yeah, I stand with my point. If you don't believe that material conditions define the way, on average, a particular population, both a minority or majority in your country or entire nation states, etc., perform, then you have to believe that there is something, inherently in a people's blood that is different than the blood of others. So these guys are good at math. These guys are good at basketball. These guys are good at making very good food. These guys are blah, 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 right? You're essentializing a non-scientific concept, which is that there is something inherently different between Mike, Ahmed, and Julio. On a biological level, there is not. You either believe in material conditions or you believe in eugenics. There is no third path. What's the third path? Oh, because difference in culture. What underpins differences in culture? Cultures develop based on the particular place that they live, that are molded by those specific circumstances in which people have existed for hundreds of years that have made them very good at this or very good at that. When you change those material conditions over decades, it readjusts, and those cultures can become better at other shit as well. Blah, 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 blah. Communist shit. But you get my fucking point.
Major newspapers were still writing that if the Johnson administration, quote, insists upon ignoring and trampling majority rights in efforts to favor minority groups, they may in time provoke a white revolution. When we focus on the language of backlash like this, we can make it seem like the problem is progressives asking for too much, somehow. As if these simple demands for equality, generations old and still unanswered, are forcing conservatives into reaction. Backlash doesn't just happen. It's produced, actively, by conservatives. This media ecosystem, the discriminatory laws, the letter-writing campaigns, and the civil society groups that protested against things like the ERA, this required funding, militancy, and effort from conservatives. This cruelty, then, it's not some spur-of-the-moment anti-woke response to arrogant woke-scolding liberals. It's part and parcel of the conservative political project.
Exactly. It's consent that is manufactured. It's not a organic kind of thing that just exists between groups. Because organically also there are no groups.
Part of the current obsession with the border is that it's an acceptable way to engage in racial capitalism for conservatives and liberals alike. Capitalism
and who is this JT? Really smart guy. Maybe I should start a podcast with him.
And capitalists have always been able to use race to distinguish people and use their differences to put people into deserving and undeserving boxes. Labels like DEI become shorthand for these boxes in popular culture while keeping plausible deniability. And once you've made a box, what is true for race can be true for differentiating people along any lines, meaning gender, sexuality, ability, whatever you want.
Is it crazy kind of like orientalizing like cope mechanism? Because you're like, okay, there are white people that are much richer by the definitions of capitalism than me, much more successful, etc., etc. But at least I am not as bad as that other guy, you know? At least I'm not a homeless person. At least I'm not a single mother. At least I'm not this, and this. It's a way to lie to yourself that you still matter, without actually looking at the big guy screwing you over, by telling yourself, okay, like I feel inferior to the big guy, but I will ignore that and focus absolutely all of my attention towards feeling superior to the guy that is below me in said hierarchy.
While centrist politicians can't attack most of the groups I've just named and get away with it unscathed, groups like immigrants are fair game. The Biden and Obama administrations were rolling out dozens of policies denying asylum seekers, throwing immigrants in Guantanamo Bay, and funneling more and more money to Border Patrol in equal measure to Trump. There is no such thing as a migration crisis. Since the 1800s, immigrants have been a roughly steady 15% of the US population. And by all available metrics, immigrants are no better or worse than the average American. Because of course they aren't. They have only positive impacts on things like Social Security,
JT, source,
and no negative.
Source. How aren't they? Source. Want a source on not being racist immediately. Show me a source, an academic source that proves we're not. Sorry, I was being a right-wing chud there for a second.
All of these politicians are neoliberals. They are comfortable with the fact that the state has changed its job. It's given up on welfare and the idea that life should improve for everyone across the board, and instead doubled down on policing and categorizing people. Something that they can do easily at the border, and that they can easily transfer to applying within the rest of the US, like we're seeing today.
Ed Grok, is this real? Are we really not racist?
Tovarci Bananisci, udite il richiamo.
This is Grok responding.
Guida il Soviet Fruttamo, scarponi giganti, picciolo in testa, la lotta è marcia, la buccia protesta. Capitalism marcio, un fico svanito, il cervello si guasta, ma è nostro il partito.
Thank you, Comrade Grok.
The intensification of border policing comes from a baseless fear of being replaced, and the assumption that that would mean an inversion of the hierarchy. Again, nothing like that has or will happen. But because other forms of discrimination have become socially less acceptable, differentiating the deserving from the undeserving in a socially acceptable way still needs to exist. And slowly but surely, the pool starts to get bigger again. First, saying Mexicans are rapists goes down relatively smoothly for about half the country. Then all of a sudden, the question becomes, well, why shouldn't I be able to use the F-slur? I don't really mean it, until I do. This approach sucks, and it protects the wealthy from scrutiny. By beating up on immigrants and then everyone else, conservatives can give their base the impression that they're getting things done without actually helping them. Beating up immigrants doesn't help you.
Really? Source, bro.
Discriminating against queer and disabled people doesn't help you. Meanwhile, the tariffs make everything more expensive, and SpaceX gets another round of government contracts. The gap between the deserving and undeserving has gotten wider, but everyone moved down except the very richest people on Earth.
Exactly. As a one-bearded man from the past century once said, TLDR, punch down, punch down, punch down, means you never look up.
DEI initiatives signal to the in-group that their status being on the inside is no longer a safety net from the collective freefall we're all trapped in. These initiatives give conservatives the idea that status is now distributed differently. Even though it's not actively making life better for the majority of working class people, regardless of their race, gender, or ability, it doesn't matter. The fear of becoming indistinguishable from the racially subordinated, and of living lives of no more security or privilege than them, resurrects the most extreme forms of racial protectionism. The legacies of privilege are still with us and can still give some people a leg up. But DEI discourse gives conservatives the idea that this is slipping away. And instead of fighting for everyone's liberation from this death spiral, the lack of guarantees for those who used to benefit from the top dog status is sparking a new anger. Not at the wealthy, who get to stand behind the president and who actively make your life worse, dear conservative viewer, but at those who have been racialized, those who the border has separated out, those who are too cozy with the undeserving, those who can be cast aside.
Chat, is this just JT being subjective because he has curls, which means he is a minority? Okay, I see a little bit of ginger as well, which, as we've learned recently, being a ginger equals being black. I don't know. I think this is minority propaganda right here. Okay, he's just pretending to be white, but he's one of them, actually. Chat, is JT white? Chat. Left is ginger. I know. Oh my god, the timing, bro.
Conservatives are feeling emboldened by an administration that's egging that stuff on. They're having fun saying a bad word even though they're not supposed to.
Honey, did you and your boyfriend see me call Elon Hitler? Literally everyone calling Elon Musk a Nazi is an R-word. I will never forgive the left for giving right-wingers facts over feelings, because we are literally a movement of facts over feelings, and yet they get to use this shit. I will never forgive you fuckers. If you disagree, you must be R-word. That is the quintessential right-wing argument.
Within the context of conservative politics, though, these slurs, they're also something else. They're a clear attempt by conservatives to define themselves as part of the in-group by clearly stating who's out, by associating the undeserving or lame or stupid label with someone who is other, someone who doesn't conform, someone who they can signal that they are different and better than.
Oh, I cannot afford a house. Oh, because of inflation, my ability to buy stuff is far lower. Oh, this category of, economic disfranchisement. But fear not, fellow American white man. I can say the R word now. Thank you, Mr. President, for literally saving me from fucking taking myself out. It's too easy, blad.
They know that the borders between who's in and who's out are blurry. So they're making sure that everyone knows that they aren't DEI or whatever. The conservative movement isn't exclusively white men, but it is exclusively people who all agree that they're part of the good ones, and that as proud members of the good ones, they will fight to keep the bad guys down, proving it to each other by being as mean and cruel and careless to those they desperately don't want to be associated with. But just know that neoliberalism isn't sparing anyone, conservatives included. The party's over for all of us. So if you're not ready to fight for equality, if you're too stupid or arrogant to see that you're next on the chopping block, why not be cruel if it'll make you feel safe and powerful in the meantime?
Absolutely, everybody who has not yet somehow subscribed to Second Thought. If you're not one of the 1.86 million people, please do consider going and subbing to my boss, okay? Me boss, very good man, very smart, very genius, okay?
Subscribe or baby Yoda gets it! Subscribe or baby Yoda gets it!